From the dragon-ravaged plains of Tarkir in the past, it is Tap Tap Concede! Yay! Welcome to Tap Tap Concede. I am here, Jer, also with a couple of other people, one of whom is named Jer, one of whom is named Cam.
Hello.
Of those two, you probably know who Cam is, but I doubt you know who...
Let's not make any assumptions here.
It's highly likely that you do not know Jeremy White. So, Jer, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Jer. I work at a local card shop, Yellow Jacket. I'm primarily an Eternal player.
And you are, when you say you're an Eternal player, there's a big Legacy tournament in Vancouver that happens a few times a year, Legacy Classic.
Yeah.
And you've top 8'd that basically every time that it's happened. Is that
I'm 4 for 6 top 8ing.
Okay.
3 in a row right now.
But constantly always the bridesmaid losing in the semifinals.
The last 3 times I've lost in the quarters to the winner.
Yeah. So fun times. But we brought Jer in because today we're going to talk a little bit about bannings and the recent bannings that happened in Modern and Legacy, and how those affect things and why bannings are important and all that fun stuff. But first,
we crack a pack.
Cam, do you want to roll this big foamy die, or we can get Jer to do it because he's
Jer, you're the guest.
Guest of honor.
Toss it. All right. 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
Dark Ascension. Is that
Foreign
Japanese?
Dark
Oh no. This is going to be bad.
All right.
It's been long enough for me that I feel like I'm not going to know what's going on.
And this pack was donated to us by Gregory, username Clip Show.
Sweet.
Thank you, Gregory.
Yeah. All right. So.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Sounds good. Yeah. 'Cause whether we remember what the card does, I will more likely remember what the card does than the name of the card.
Oh, already.
Scorned Villager.
Oh, this is actually like one of my favorite
Foil
types of
Scorned
cards.
Villager.
Nice.
Yeah. So this card based on the Red Riding Hood, and she was a werewolf.
Yep.
Right. So if somebody didn't cast a spell during an entire turn, you flipped her.
Right.
Right. And then she became.
The big bad wolf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
However, she basically her ability is she's a mana elf, so she taps for green. But when she is a wolf, she gains vigilance. So you can fight, tap, gain mana.
And she now taps for 2 green.
And
Yeah.
yeah. With double green. Yeah. Which is crazy.
Sick.
Yeah.
So as she is foil, we have another.
Reckless Wave.
No, not
that's
Reckless Wave.
That's Hinterland Hermit.
Yeah, Hinterland Hermit. So
He is a 2/1 for 2.
Yeah.
He's a piker. I don't remember what he does.
I don't think he did anything.
He's vanilla. He's vanilla.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's a vanilla werewolf, and
I think he might have been only be able to blocked by 1 creature on
Hmm.
the other side.
Yeah.
So he was.
When he flips, he becomes a 3/2 werewolf.
That's a guy I think that made my deck sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's fine.
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
yeah, he fills the curve.
Yeah. Right.
He must be blocked every turn if able.
Oh,
when
okay.
he's- when he's
Must
flipped.
be blocked.
Yeah.
That's the one.
All
There's
right.
something about being blocked.
So, going through our commons, we have a
Evolving
Wilds.
Wilds. Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
It's a
totally good.
Great card, and I mean, limited, very, very relevant. Fix your mana.
Young wolf.
Yeah, Young Wolf.
Well,
Which,
that's
what was
a
the
good
ability
one.
called?
Undying.
Yeah.
So it's a 1/1 that when it dies comes back as a 2/2.
Yeah, that card's great.
Yeah. Nobody likes blocking that thing.
Nope.
We have a blue piker zombie who mills you for 2.
Collector's number.
47.
Yep. I believe you are correct. That is a mill zombie, and in Innistrad, this was one of the strategies, was that basically you would mill yourself, self mill, and try and get some juicy stuff in your graveyard, either
especially with flashback. in
Yeah.
that format.
Yeah, flashback
You could get some
or,
real value from the self film.
spider spawning.
Also, you had scabs, zombies that you had to exile stuff from your graveyard when you put them into play, and so that was sort of like you'd get these guys out, and then you'd get scabs for super cheap.
Yeah.
This is the Screeching Scob, in fact.
Okay.
And he needs the 2 top cards of your library into your graveyard when he comes into play.
Nice.
All right. So we have a bear elk here.
Dawn Treader Elk,
Dawn Treader elk. I believe you sacked this guy to go not explore, but
Rampant Growth.
rampant growth, right?
Yeah, that guy was good. I remember playing that card a fair bit.
Yeah,
So you
well,
fight, and when he stops being relevant, you block something and sack it in response.
and as previously mentioned, having creature cards in your graveyard is relevant for a bunch of different cards in that set.
Also, morbid was a thing too. So
Yeah,
it was a
having
way
Morbid
that
on tab.
Yeah, I mean, like as I recall, things that allowed you to sacrifice basically anytime you wanted in this block were a little bit more uncommon because they did enable morbid in that way.
Yeah. Nephalia Seaskite.
Yeah, Nephalia Seaskite, a 2/3 flyer for 3 and a blue with flash.
Yeah,
So-
very.
And I think he removed a creature from combat.
No, this
Just-
guy was
just
just
with
plain
flash?
vanilla. But a 2/3 flyer in blue with flash, super important
guy
because it meant
removes
you could
some
hold up counter magic, or at least threaten counter magic.
I seem to remember there
So,
was
like-
another like not flash card, but there was another like instant or instant card that people would always think that I had when I was holding a sea kite.
Yeah.
and sea kite was like the thing that I wanted to have less in that spot. I just don't
Well-
remember what the card was.
Briar Pack Alpha?
Maybe.
Because,
Yeah, that sounds right.
yeah,
That guy was
yeah.
so good.
Yeah, because the green equivalent of this guy was like a 3/3 that gave something giant growth when it came into
Or
play.
I think it might have been +2/+2, but it was
Right.
still very strong.
Yeah.
All right. An instant or sorcery whose name I can't remember.
Gather the
Gather the
townsfolk.
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 Yeah.
That gives you 2
Had-
villagers.
Or Fateful Hour, I think
Right.
made 5.
Right. That card was great. I played this card a lot because green-white was sort of where I wanted to be in this format, basically every time. And surprisingly, like often not as hard to get as you might think, because I thought it was the best archetype easily. But yeah, green-white tokens or green-white humans was very, very relevant.
I definitely played this card in Constructed.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there was also that. There were a bunch of constructed decks.
Yeah,
that,
the humans tribal deck with Mayor of Averbrook.
yeah.
Oh, right.
Champion of the Parish. Curving Champion of the Parish into this and then attacking for 3 on turn 2
Yeah.
was
Right. Which I referred to as Mare Force 1, but never caught on much to my chagrin.
I don't think it was very good.
no.
I want to say, no, collector's number 75.
As Paul puts it up,
Seems like an enchantment.
it seems like a card that was never played. Spiteful Shadows. Paul, what does it do?
The Spiteful Shadows is an enchant creature for black and 1, and whenever an enchanted creature is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to its controller.
Right. So a card that does effectively nothing. It gives your
Yeah.
opponent a lot of control over whether it actually does anything at all ever.
Yeah.
And it probably does not do that.
No, but you put this on like a wall of frost, and then you just swing
Oh,
in. And it's
yeah.
like it gives your guys trample, basically.
Amazing.
Like for infinite.
I don't know what this card is.
I remember getting past this card a lot.
I remember-
Thinking, 66.
I seem to remember this was like a black like a 4-mana black removal spell, and it was okay.
Conditional.
Gruesome Discovery.
Oh yeah, no, I'm thinking of the wrong card.
2 and 2 black. Target player discards 2 cards. And it's got Morbid. If a creature died this turn, that player reveals their hand and you choose 2 cards.
I don't think this card ever was played by anyone.
No.
I played it once and it was really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah.
I mean, the sort of target player discards 2 cards is normally 3 mana, and it's
Yeah.
not very good at 3 mana.
Yeah.
It can be okay in core set, but like usually not. For 4 mana, it seems like a stretch.
Yeah, it needs to
Yeah.
be a fairly slow format for Mind Rot to be
Yeah.
effective.
We have an equipment.
Oh,
Hunter's Quiver.
Hunter's Quiver?
Yeah.
Yeah. Equips for 5, and then do you tap to dome something out, I think?
I think you tap to do 1 damage to target creature or player, and it does something more versus werewolves.
Yeah.
Right.
And that card was oppressive if you were playing the werewolf deck.
Yeah,
Right.
it was just an awkward sideboard card that you hope nobody had
Yeah.
if you had more than 3 or 4 werewolves in your deck.
Yeah, just it does 1 damage to a creature or player or 3 damage to a werewolf.
Right. So it'll kill most werewolves. It makes things very, very awkward for the werewolf player.
Yeah, because most of the werewolves aren't actually that big. They just have pretty good abilities. So that kills almost every werewolf.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next we have
Burning Oil.
Burning Oil, which was kind of the
I think it deals 3 damage to an attacking creature and flashes back for 3 and a white.
Yeah.
Right.
And this was a fine removal spell.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
this
was,
card was good.
It was, even if you weren't playing white, it was acceptable most of the time.
Then we have the Persist Geist in blue.
I don't think
3
this guy's persist.
wasn't he? I thought he
No,
was
this is
Persist.
Towergeist. I think he
Towergeist?
filtered. You look at the top 2 cards of your library, put 1 into your graveyard, 1 into your hand.
Oh, okay.
This guy, I seem to recall doing some serious work for me at a GP.
Yeah, this guy was very good.
Oh, right.
You wanted to be playing a more controlling deck for this guy, but he was...
I think the Undying Geist is 1 blue
Oh, right.
and could only block flyers
Right.
and had Undying.
Yeah, no, I remember this guy.
Yeah.
Fiend of the Shadows.
Fiend of the Shadows is our rare.
This card,
3
I remember.
black for a 3/3 flyer. Vampire, right?
I want to say that it was a vampire. Maybe
I
it was-
remember this card either being really good and almost winning you the game on the spot. I think it closes out games super well. It says something about stealing creatures from your opponent or cards.
Is a vampire wizard. And for 3 colorless and 2 black, flying 3/3. Whenever Fiend of the Shadows deals combat damage to a player, that player exiles a card from his or her hand. You may play that card for as long as it remains exiled, and sacrifice a human to regenerate him.
Right. So it's not actually it's not actually incredible. It's basically an air elemental a lot of the time. Wait, is it from the hand or from the
hand.
From the
Okay,
hand,
never
so
mind.
yes,
it's an
it's
air
better.
elemental that also has the specter ability.
Yeah,
more or less.
And
it's
and instead of hitting your library, it hits your hand.
It's almost like Night Veil Spectre.
yeah.
I mean, it's obviously not as good as Night Veil because it's much harder to play it. I remember when Night Veil came out, I was like, oh, they finally figured out how to make that card like more relevant.
Yeah.
Because this one, a lot of the time you won't be able to play the card, but you're okay, I think, with an air elemental that makes them discard cards most of the time.
I've definitely
anyway.
lost to that
Yeah.
card before. Even a 3/3 flyer that can regenerate in
Yeah.
that format is pretty solid.
And again,
Yeah.
when you have like human tribal and you've got token makers that make a bunch of humans and things like that,
Yeah.
it's very
Yeah.
good. Are we considering this card enough of a bomb that it's our slam first pick from this pack?
I think Towergeist is pretty close.
Yeah, Towergeist is quite good, but I think this card, I would want to play with that card more than anything else here. Possibly with the exception of the foil werewolf, because I just think she's a sweet card. Like, I love tap abilities on cards that have vigilance. They just make me happy.
Yeah.
It is sweet design.
Yeah. I feel like at this point, I don't know. I seem to remember that I would want to be black in this format more than I would want to be blue. But I would be trying to jump into some sort of crazy graveyard shenanigans deck, and black is much more suitable for that.
I really liked the blue-white flyers archetype in this format.
Yeah. So you could also there was a respectable blue-white humans deck actually too.
Yeah.
The green-white humans deck was the sort of the more powerful of the two, I felt, but the blue-white one was also fine.
Well, yeah, because in Innistrad you could pick up the uncommon Pseudo Lord,
Right.
who got +1/+1 for every attacking human.
Hamlet Captain.
Yeah.
He gave all attacking humans +1/+1.
Yeah, and uncommon, that seems fine.
One of the biggest reason to be green-white was travel preparation.
Oh,
That
right.
card was such a game.
So good, so good. Travel prep was
Right.
You could put 2 +1/+1 counters however you wanted on things, and then flash it back to do it again. And you would often do it in the same turn.
Yeah, you'd often go 2-drop, 3-drop, travel prep, flashback, travel prep, goodbye.
Yes, which was amazing.
Yeah, it's been
opponent.
nice, but
Hey, so let's move our discussion into constructed.
Yeah.
A little bit. And so we've had a BNR announcement, banned and restricted announcement. Restricted actually only applies to one format, Vintage. And there was definitely a restricted card, but we're going to focus a little bit more on bannings today because that's what affects more people. Now, if you are unaware, what happens with BNR announcements is they happen usually right before a set comes out. There's sort of like the Monday before a set is officially released, or right after the pre-release, is when Wizards will update BNR, make BNR changes. And it's typically you will see BNR update, no updates. That happens a lot. But every once in a while, a big change gets made.
Well, like a couple of years ago, we had Stoneforge and Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Well,
that was in standard, which is very unusual.
Yeah, it's very uncommon that something will need to be kicked out of standard, because standard is meticulously play tested, and it's a lot easier to play test standard because it's a lot smaller of a card pool. But they've gotten, I think, pretty wise in making sure that they understand the power level of the cards that they're putting out. And I don't know, like that was a weird thing, because in the ironic thing is that Jace and Stoneforge both lasted for a year in standard. Before they even started to be like heavily played
in the same deck.
Yeah.
Well, heavily played at all. Like Jace was not really super playable. So that we're going back a few years. Jace was not very playable in standard
Because of Bloodbraid Elf.
Because of Jund, and he was just super easy to kill, and so he wasn't playable for a while. And then Stoneforge was sort of like this niche card that showed up, but there wasn't like a lot of super great equipment to fetch up with her.
Right, because there was the Argentum Quest deck,
But that didn't show up.
But that didn't
until, like, again, when, like, in the first year that Stoneforge was around, that Argentum wasn't around. And so when we had the switchover from the Shards of Alara and Zendikar standard to Zendikar and Scars of Mirrodin standard, suddenly the Jund was gone. So you had this really good control deck that everyone sort of knew was going to be really good, that people were suddenly able to play. And that's where Jace started showing up. And then Stoneforge started showing up in this weird Quest for the Holy Relic deck, where
she didn't even really... Because Quest for the Holy Relic, it allowed you to tutor for it and put it into play. And then you used Core Outfitter to equip it because it had an oppressive equip cost.
She was a backup plan in that deck. And it wasn't until at some point people started...
Batterskull got printed.
Batterskull, and then Sword of
Feast and Famine was in the first Scars blog.
Well, it was in the second set, but that's where it started to get dirty. And everyone knew that deck was really, really good. And then Batterskull got printed, and it was just sort of the nail in the coffin. But anyway, let's take a step back, because instead of talking about standard from 5 years ago, so it's really rare that any sort of standard bannings will take place. And standard bannings are typically like, oh God, we made a mistake. We need to
push the red button.
We need to get stuff out of the metagame right now because it is just destroying everything. And there's only been like a few significant standard bannings ever. Modern is a very different animal, though. Wizards has, like, when they first put Modern out, they had already a fairly significant ban list in place. And that was stuff that they felt would potentially break the format or lead to less fun things happening in the format.
If you look at the original ban list, it hurt almost all the best decks from past standard, like Fairies, Dredge, Affinity, Hypergenesis. And there are also some really broken cards like Hypergenesis and stuff they just didn't want on the list.
I think that they'd stated that their purpose at that point was to make sure that they weren't enabling, I think it was turn 2 or turn 3 wins, that they wanted Modern to go longer than that, and also get rid of things that were just not fun. Like Top is on the Modern ban list, but I think the primary reason that Top is on there, beyond being quite powerful, is, I guess, is
time constraints.
Yeah, it's not.
It's the same reason they banned Faith's Reward. Did they ban Second Sunrise or Faith's Reward?
I think they banned Second Sunrise. I'm not sure. One of those is on there.
Yeah, it's the same reason they banned that card.
Yeah, because those cards are... Top is a card that takes basically you can activate all the time, and it requires you to make a decision. And the more decisions that you have to make at any given time, the longer you're gonna run out of decision juice in your brain. And if you're not used to playing the card a lot, it's gonna be a lot harder for you to do it. And
I'm also not sure they wanted a top counterbalance deck in Modern.
I mean, this is also true. But that was the original Modern banned list. But since then, they have they've taken steps to shake up the Modern metagame fairly regularly. But first, before we talk about shaking up the metagame, the first big cards that got banned from Modern, and they were sort of banned together as one thing, is Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So these cards just got printed in Cons of Tarkir. They're both blue delve spells. Treasure Cruise costs 7 and a blue with delve. So it quite often only costs one blue mana, and it was draw 3 cards.
Yeah.
So it did a very good impression of Ancestral Recall, which is definitely not okay in a modern format.
It's funny that they've tried to sort of find a fair version of Ancestral Recall for a long time.
Yeah, and each one has wound up being banned effectively.
Well, super busted. Brainstorm is sort of a good first attempt to reprint Ancestral Recall, right? It's like, okay, you're still drawing 3 cards for 1 mana, but you've got to put 2 of them back. So that's fair.
Yeah.
And again, to be fair, Brainstorm wasn't super busted until Fetch Lands sort of existed.
Yeah.
And
now
you could,
it's the best card in Legacy.
Yeah. If you've got Brainstorm, you draw 3, and then you put 2 back, whatever 2 you don't want,
from your hand.
And then you can crack a Fetch Land, which those were obviously many of them just reprinted in Cons block, and shuffle your deck. You get a land as well, but the reason you're doing it is to shuffle your deck, so that the 2 cards you put back you don't actually have to use. So Brainstorm, originally you would draw 3, put 2 back, but then you would have to draw those 2 cards, even if they were the worst cards in your deck.
Yeah,
you still
called brainwalking yourself.
Right. Well, I mean, at the time it was just how you use Brainstorm.
Yeah.
But as soon as Fetch Lands got printed, Brainstorm became a lot better. But so anyway, Ancestral Recall variants, tangents, very powerful.
Yes. Even Ancestral Vision is still banned in Modern,
Right.
and it's pretty widely viewed that Treasure Cruise is definitely better than Ancestral Vision because you usually get to cast it faster.
Well, Cam, you're a big player of cards that draw cards, and we had a card in M14 that drew 3 cards.
Right, Jace's Ingenuity.
And how much did that card cost?
5 mana.
So Treasure Cruise,
Yes.
if you're getting it for 5 mana, which you only have to exile 3 cards for, is a fine deal.
Yeah. Well, especially if one of those cards is a fetch land and the other 2 are, I don't know, cards that you have gotten mileage out of already.
Instants or sorceries that just sort of happen to be there. Treasure Cruise, I think you're getting a fine deal at 5 mana, and for 4 mana or 3 mana, you're really happy.
Yeah.
And for 2 or 1, it's just busted.
Well, yeah, like in Standard, you're exiling maybe a fetch. In Modern, you're exiling a fetch land, 2 Gataxian Probes, 2 Lightning Bolts, and like a Gut Shot.
Right. And I mean, also Treasure Cruise banned in Legacy, and for similar reasons. There's a lot more cantrips in Legacy, so cards that you play and then draw you another card. So it's much easier to get like Ponder, Preordain, Gataxian Probe, etc. in your graveyard, and then by the way, incidentally, I'm drawing 3 cards.
Yeah.
So it was a very exciting card. Nothing feels better than drawing 3.
Yeah.
If you have not drawn 3 recently, I highly recommend that you draw 3.
Yeah.
It's just best feeling in Magic.
Yeah, having 3 extra cards is just so game breaking in a lot of ways that
Well, your first
especially in a attrition-y format like Modern, where your black-green opponent is trying to 1-for-1 you with Thoughtseize and Abrupt Decay, and they're just loading up your graveyard for you.
Yeah.
On top of all the fetch lands and cantrips you're casting. And then by turn 3 or 4, you're like, okay, I've had enough of this. 1 mana, draw 3. and then they look at their 2 remaining 1-for-1 spells, look at your 5 cards, and know things aren't going to go well from
Things
here.
are pretty bad from here on out. Yeah. So that's Treasure Cruise. Now, Dig Through Time, also banned in Modern. Dig Through Time, sort of Treasure Cruise's big brother in a lot of ways. This card is more expensive and it's double blue. I guess it's, yeah. And again, Dig is a very different kind of card. Dig allows you to see a lot of cards.
So the different decks want either of these 2 cards. The decks that want Treasure Cruise are the decks that are very redundant, play many of the same cards, and just want to keep up velocity. They just want to get through their deck as fast as possible. They're going to get there eventually, so they just want to draw all the cards. Dig Through Time is played in decks where you need specific cards. You really value the card selection over the quantity. You want quality over quantity. So it's played in generally combo decks to find your combo pieces or protection for the combo turn. So you want to find a counter spell and a scape shift and scape shift. So when you get your 7th land in play, you can go scape shift, counter whatever you're trying to do to stop me, and then you win.
Yeah. So Dig is powerful. It's not necessarily powerful in the same decks, but I think it goes without saying that both these Delve cards are more powerful than they intended them to be.
Definitely.
And at least in Modern. And one of the things that Wizards has been pretty upfront with is the fact that they don't test the Eternal formats as much as they do Standard. They sort of let them figure themselves out in a lot of ways. And sometimes they self-correct. So, again, slight digression, when True Name Nemesis was printed, it dominated Legacy for a little while. People were like, True Name's too powerful, it needs to be emergency banned, it's insane, it beats everything. And it went into all these sort of Blade decks, and it was used in Merfolk, but it was also just used as a value creature in like Delver decks for a while. And
Yeah, well, it didn't beat everything. It was just really format warping because it essentially instantly wiped Maverick off the face of the earth, which is a green-white creature deck that had very few ways to interact with a creature with protection from everything.
yeah.
Like, they weren't well set up to beat Progenitus, but they could usually beat their opponents before that happens. But a 3-mana Progenitus that you can afford to put 4 of in your deck
Is pretty good.
is real good.
But but the metagame self-corrected.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. So what are we talking about when we talk about something being format warping? And is
Right.
warping a format inherently bad?
So what I mean when I say format warping is it causes all the decks to either play that card or have a plan to beat that card. So in Legacy, what happened is you started seeing about... I mean, there's obviously going to be exceptions. Legacy is a super diverse format. But roughly half the decks were playing True Name Nemesis, and the other half of the decks were combo decks or miracles or some sort of strategy that just didn't care if your opponent played a True Name Nemesis. It just completely wiped out the style of deck like Death and Taxes or Maverick, which were creature-based attrition decks that could fight combo decks, could fight miracles, but just didn't have the tools available to fight this one particular card.
Yeah.
Okay.
But interestingly, Legacy, partially as a result of cards like Treasure Cruise, is self-corrected. It has more or less self-corrected anyway. I mean, and when I say that, True Name has found a spot in a couple of decks, and those decks aren't even widely played at this point in time.
Well, I'd also heard that one particular card in Fate Reforged, Wild Slash, which is a shock for 1 red mana. Shock deals 2 damage to a target creature or player, but with a ferocious trigger up, which is if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, damage can't be prevented this turn.
Right.
As being a new tech against True Name Nemesis. Because even though you can't target True Name Nemesis, if you dome out your opponent with this card, then the damage cannot be prevented to True Name
So if you
Nemesis.
attacked with, say, your Tarmogoyf, and they blocked with their True Name Nemesis because it has protection from your Tarmogoyf, and your Tarmogoyf's a 4/5, so it'll activate Ferocious. If you Wild Slash one of their other creatures or their opponent, True Name's protection ability will be nullified because of the damage prevention clause on Wild Slash.
There's also Council's Judgment, which was significant. That gave especially Death and Taxes a way to just deal with it. Council's Judgment, when played outside of Conspiracy in a constructed format, basically acts like an Oblivion ring that doesn't target. So you can say, hey, by True Name, you're dead. And that was also pretty important to getting things sort of back on track. But in situations where they cannot correct the metagame in a reasonable way, that's when we start to see bannings like this.
Yeah.
And what had happened in Modern with Treasure Cruise especially was that the Delver deck got very, very good. This was also true of Legacy. The Delver deck that was basically just trying to fire off as many instants and sorceries as possible and get wins through. It was still using Young Pyromancer in Modern, right? And,
it was Young
Delver.
Pyromancer, Delver, and Swift Spear.
Right. So very similar to the Legacy deck.
Yeah.
That deck just became very, very powerful because it was able to previously, like the mid-range decks like Junk and whatever had been able to, Junk is Abzan, had been able to outlast it. But with something like Treasure Cruise, it just was not.
Yeah,
anymore.
and the 3 threats in the deck, Monastery Swift Spear, Delver of Secrets, and Young Pyromancer, they were all very, very cheap, and they all interacted incredibly well by loading your deck up with really cheap instants and sorceries that would just filter through your deck as fast as possible. So Monastery Swift Spear, because it has prowess, if you play it on turn 1 and then go Gitaxian Probe, cast a Serum Visions, you're attacking for 4
immediately
on turn 2 after attacking for 1 the first turn.
Yeah. So that deck became very powerful and very, very heavily played. I was looking and like on Magic Online, and this is Legacy, not Modern, but Legacy is a very diverse format where it's unusual for decks to have a huge amount of the metagame. And in Legacy, Blue-Red Delver was, or Blue-Red-White Delver was like 15% of the metagame by the end of this.
Which may not sound like a lot, but it's very rare for a deck to ever get double digits
in Legacy.
in format stake in Legacy.
Yeah.
Well, and one particular powerful thing about the Modern version of this deck was how cheap it was dollar-wise.
Yeah, so it was also a very accessible deck because you're not playing Tarmogoyf. You don't need that many shock lands. You don't need that many fetch lands. You don't need Lilianas. You don't need Dark Confidant.
Yeah.
You don't need any of the staples that you needed to build a Modern deck previously.
So with the banning of Treasure Cruise, that sort of left the door open a little bit for decks like Scapeshift, which was a very, very well tested and reliable and refined combo deck, or has become such over time.
Yeah.
Scapeshift is what Valakut evolved into, isn't it?
Scapeshift is, it's a deck where your end game is basically to get a bunch of mana, cast Scapeshift, search up a Valakut and a bunch of mountains and kill your opponent instantly.
In essence, it's a red-blue teamer control deck that uses Scapeshift as a win condition. So it plays lots of land acceleration spells. It plays Search for Tomorrow, Secure a Tribe Elder. It'll play Anger of the Gods or Fire Spout, usually to try and control early creatures. It'll play counter spells like Remand and Cryptic Command. And it just wants to draw the game out, hit its land drops, and then cast Scapeshift with a counterspell back up.
And so this spell or this deck was obviously going to be quite popular. Dig Through Time was definitely sort of an engine for that deck. It just allowed it a lot of card selection.
Well, it just made it so consistent to go off on time. Previously, it played Serum Visions or even Peer Through Depths to try and add consistency to the deck. But Dig Through Time was so much better than both of those cards. Leagues better.
So, basically, banning Dig Through Time feels a little bit more like a preventative measure in Modern. I feel like the problem was Treasure Cruise, but so to go back to Standard for a second, the previous bannings before Jason Stoneforge was Affinity. And that was like 10 years ago at this point. But when they banned Affinity, I think, what was it? They banned Skull Clamp first. And then that wasn't enough, so they had to go back and ban all the artifact lands and Disciple of the Vault and some other stuff as well. Was Ravager actually banned?
I don't think Ravager was ever banned.
Right. Well, in the interim between those, we also had a Bloodbraid Elf ban, didn't we?
Not in Standard.
No, that was in...
in Standard. In Standard, excuse me. Sorry, I thought...
And so, I think I agree with you. This was sort of foresight on Wizards' part to try and stop having to ban it in the future, because once these decks lost Treasure Cruise, they'd first look for something to replace it, and the closest thing is obviously Dig Through Time. It's not as good in say the Blue-Red Delver deck, but it might have done a good enough stand-in job that it wouldn't have changed too much. So I think they probably banned it as more of a preventative measure than anything else. And
it's the kind of card that I could potentially see getting unbanned at some point several years down the line if they decide that it's not as big a threat. But it makes sense to sort of ban now and sort of sort it out later. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the final card that was banned from Modern, Birthing Pod. And Birthing Pod is a card and a deck that's been around in Modern since Modern started. It started out as more of a combo-y deck.
Yeah, it's sort of grown more and more fair as
quote unquote.
Yeah, as it's being developed.
So the original Birthing Pod decks, and Paul's got Birthing Pod up on screen right now, would play mana acceleration creatures, so Noble Hierarch and Birds of Paradise, and then get a Birthing Pod out and start podding those things into other things in their deck. And the catch with what they would do is that they would play cards that had Enter the Battlefield effects or Ghost of the Graveyard effects, or
like
both.
Like Kitchen Finks was the best card in this deck, and almost every pod deck from its beginning to end played at least 3, probably 4 Kitchen Finks in it.
Yeah. And so you would get a lot of incidental value because you would be able to pod into Kitchen Finks and then pod your Kitchen Finks, getting back Kitchen Finks to get something at 4. And so originally these decks would try and get a Kiki Jiki out and start comboing it in the same way that a Splinter Twin deck would, or they would try and get Melira out and basically make all of their persist creatures invincible and do some dirty stuff with that.
Yeah.
Because that as soon as they got Melira out, all of their persist creatures could be potted infinitely.
Well, the traditional Melira combo was Melira plus Viscera Seer plus either Kitchen Finks or Murderous Redcap.
Right.
So you had a creature with a sacrifice another creature ability, so you could just either gain as much life as you wanted to or deal as much damage with Murderous Redcap as you wanted to. So,
but over time, the pod deck has become different. It has started playing Siege Rhinos. And, I mean, that's the card that's sort of the nail in the coffin. But it's become more of a value deck over time.
Since it was always such a big part of the metagame, it was always... People always had slots devoted in their sideboard to Birthing Pod decks. And one of the best removal spells in Modern is Path to Exile, which is very, very good against the pod deck, against the persist creatures in particular, because it would exile them, so it would nullify the persist aspect of the card. So by playing cards like Siege Rhino and Courser of Crewfix, and cards that don't necessarily have Enter the Battlefield or When This Dies triggers, it is a transition from some of the more hateful cards towards Birthing Pod and into just more of a black-green X Jund style deck that just has birthing pods in it for value.
Right. And is able to just fetch up answers for things. Like the other thing is that the birthing pod deck was just incredibly effective at finding its sideboard cards.
Yeah,
Right.
like Aven Mind Sensor against Scape Shift, Eidolon of Rhetoric against Storm, Kataki against Affinity.
Yeah. But so let's just talk briefly. We're seeing one card get banned at this point. So Birthing Pod is getting banned. What is that like? How does one card getting banned actually affect? Because people are talking about huge shifts in the metagame at this point. How does that happen?
So I think it's I think Birthing Pod and Blue Red Delver pre-bannings had the two largest stakes in Modern. You didn't see too many other black-green decks in the format because they couldn't keep up with Birthing Pod or the Treasure Cruise decks. They just couldn't generate as much value as either of those decks were generating. You didn't see too many other combo decks apart from Scape Shift and Splinter Twin. And even Affinity had a lower stake in the metagame than it had before. So what these bannings accomplish, or what the result of them is that people will try and figure out what decks are currently the best without these cards. So the metagame early on will almost take a step back to before Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time were banned, minus the Birthing Pod decks. So you'll see a lot of Jund decks, you'll see a lot of Scape Shift decks, you'll see a lot of Splinter Twin decks, you'll see a lot of Affinity decks. So the metagame will completely change just because of the three cards that got banned.
Right. And now that, but then from there, I mean, there obviously have been new things printed, and also no one has to worry about pod anymore.
Yeah, so there's definitely going to be innovation going on, and it's really exciting to see that.
Yeah.
So we'll get to see that play out a bit at GP Vancouver in
and
4 weeks.
And the Pro Tour coming up as well as
Right.
Modern.
Yeah, so that should be exciting. There was an unbanning of Golgari Grave Troll. Jer, as someone who knows about the metagame, does that actually make any difference? It's weird. It's been on the ban list since before Modern existed, since we played it at the Community Cup, or since Graham played it at the Community Cup, like the year before it came out.
So since the banning of Deathrite Shaman, graveyard strategies have become more viable just because Deathrite Shaman had so much incidental hate on the graveyard and was such a good value card that everyone played anyways. It was hard to play a graveyard strategy when so much the room was playing for Deathrite Shamans. I've seen on Magic Online people playing sort of pseudo dredge decks without dredge cards. So they play cards like Bloodghast, Gravecrawler, Vengevine. And I'm not sure if Golgari Grave Troll fits into that shell. It may or may not. I don't think it's going to have a huge impact on the metagame either way.
It's a lot of the cards that make dredge what it is in Legacy don't exist in Modern.
Right.
Yeah, they don't.
So you don't have the black card returns something, sacrifice 3 creatures, return it to the battlefield.
Phantasmagoria.
No.
Dread Return. Dread Return is banned in
or
Modern.
Cabal Therapy, which is only a legacy card.
Icarid does not exist in Modern.
Yeah, so a lot of the engine just isn't there for a Modern dredge deck.
Yeah. Though, actually, if you go back to that that Community Cup where Graham was trying out Modern for the first time before it was released, one of the WotC employees was playing Dredge. He had a blue-black, I think, Dredge deck with Bridge from Below's in it, and Narcomoebas, and all sorts of other shenanigans. I think people will experiment with it.
I think so, for sure.
I'd like to see Dredge around just because it's kind of a weird deck.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Is there anything else that we want to touch on? We could talk a little bit about sort of where we see the format going if you want, but we've already kind of touched on that. We could talk a little bit about Legacy. how Legacy is changing?
Yeah, we
I
could,
think touching on Legacy would be
we could
nice.
talk on Legacy.
Sure. I've been pretty happy in Legacy recently because there's all these blue-red Delver decks running around, and I play a deck called Death and Taxes, which really punishes decks, in particular right now, that want to draw a lot of cards.
Right. Well, yeah, because you pot out Thalia, and then you pot out...
Well, he doesn't pod in Death and Taxes.
Ether Vial.
Ether Vial. Yeah, not pod. Ether Vial, excuse me.
More
Sorry.
broken cards that allow you to play cards for free.
Yes. Sorry, Ether Vial.
Yeah.
You vial in Thalia, and then you vial in Spirit of the Labyrinth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Spirit in my deck got a lot more play with Treasure Cruise around. I see that card going back down to where it was, which was either a sideboard card or like a 1 or 2 of.
Yeah, it's definitely going to see less play in Legacy.
Yeah, but so I was pretty happy with the situation as it was.
Yeah, definitely.
Because my deck was we talked about like the deck that either runs the card or the deck that's set up to hate on it. My deck was very well set up to hate on it.
Yeah, I had to switch decks. I was playing a Stoneblade style deck, so it was a control deck with Stoneforge Mystic, Jace, and just lots of really good blue cards.
Yeah.
So it was somewhat similar to the modern standard deck we talked about from
earlier.
5 years ago.
Yeah.
Still good in Legacy.
yeah,
So
only
I,
with like Jite instead of Sword of Feast and Famine.
yeah, it's slightly better.
Yeah.
Force of Wills. That's a good card.
Previously
So I-
mentioned True Name Nemesis also.
Yeah.
Appearance.
So I transitioned to a combo deck, Omniscience Show and Tell combo deck, where I would show and tell in Omniscience, cast Enter the Infinite to draw my entire library, and then I'd put a card with really high converted mana cost back on top of my library, most often Emrakul, and then I would Cunning Wish for Release the Ants, and then Release the Ants reads Clash with an opponent if you win the clash, and clashing is if both players reveal the top card of their library, whoever has the highest converted mana cost card wins the clash. Or Paul's got it up now. And it deals 1 damage to target creature or player, and then if you win the clash, you get to return it. So I had Emrakul on top of my library because it was the only card left in my deck after resolving Enter the Infinite. So I'd always win the clash with Release the Ants.
Yeah.
And so I just got to...
And because of Omniscience, you can just cast it over,
Yeah,
and over
I
again
can cast it for free.
So yeah, you just win at that point.
And that deck was fairly well positioned against Blue Red Delver because they had been shaving Dazes. They didn't play Spell Pierce, so they didn't actually have a lot of interaction with combo decks. And traditionally, Delver decks have been very good against combo decks, but combo players quickly realized that this deck wasn't actually a traditional Delver deck, didn't play Wasteland to keep you off mana, didn't play Stifle to keep you off mana, didn't really play many counter spells. Yeah. So combo players all of a sudden were, hey, this isn't so bad.
Yeah. So what do you see the Legacy metagame turning into now that this deck is gone? Now, to just again to our viewers, Eternal formats change a lot more slowly than something like Standard. When Standard rotates, Standard changes a lot. Whereas any given set will maybe add 1 card to a given Legacy deck, but it won't change things very much. But so this Blue-Red Delver deck getting so big in Legacy was sort of an anomaly. Where do you see the metagame moving?
I think we're going to see some more Stoneforge mid-range decks come back because, yet again, it was sort of, like I mentioned before, Jund versus the Treasure Cruise decks earlier. They'd try to 1-for-1 you, play some value, creatures, Stoneforge Mystic, try and generate value with Jace. But when these Delver decks could just draw 3 so many points during the game, it was so hard to keep up with them. So I think those decks are going to come back. You're going to see more True Name Nemesis than before. I don't think it's going to go back to as prevalent as it was beforehand.
And traditional Delver decks probably making a return.
Yeah, I was going to say Rug Delver is probably one of the happiest decks to see Treasure Cruise go away because Rug Delver played Nimble Mongoose and Tarmogoyf, 2 cards that interact with your own graveyard. So they didn't want to play Treasure Cruise. They didn't want to delve away all the cards in their graveyard.
Awesome. Cool. I think that's probably pretty good. Hopefully, I mean, we've talked a fair bit about some fairly deep stuff.
Yeah.
So hopefully, we've done an okay job of helping everyone keep up and whatnot. With the regular crew away, we are here to teach you about the kind of Magic that we play sometimes, which is sometimes eternal stuff and a little bit farther off the beaten path. But yeah.
Where the only eternal decks I play don't interact at all. So if you don't know the meta, don't interact, don't care.
Yeah,
Am I dead yet? Okay, I combo out.
Yeah, we know that Cam plays Storm in whatever format that he is able to play Storm.
It's so sweet.
How is your standard Storm deck, Cam?
Well, I'm hoping right now to the Jeskai leader, Narset into Howl of the Horde and take extra turns.
Oh yeah.
3 extra turns, and then maybe hit a Jeskai Charm off that too. That would be like perfect.
I mean,
Yeah.
Jeskai Ascension, frankly, as a standard deck, also seems pretty much your style.
Yeah. Although there are a lot of people playing it now, and well, not a lot of people, but I've heard other people playing it.
They started putting creatures in it.
Oh no!
Yeah, no, yeah,
Gross.
yeah. And really, I've heard it plays like the green mana dorks too now.
Yeah, Sylvan Carrier.
Which is just like, I don't play green. I don't.
What
Green
is-
isn't my thing.
What is that red? What is that red card? Something advisor. It's
Humble
like
Defector.
Humble Defector, the
Yeah.
one that draws you cards and like sends itself over to your opponent. That thing with Jeskai Ascension.
In
Yeah.
the pre-release, I had 2 Humble Defectors in my pool with 2 collateral damage, which is the new Lightning Bolt.
Oh, yeah.
You sack a creature. So I'd activate it to draw 2 cards, hold priority, sack it to kill one of their other creatures.
Nice.
Yeah. So you 2 for
That
2
was-
yourself, basically, but.
No, because
Well, you get rid of the Defector.
It's a 3 for 2.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Right. Yeah. Because you're getting rid of one of their cards too.
But with
Yeah.
Jeskai Ascendancy, it's like draw 2, play a card, untap, draw 2, play a card, untap, draw 2, play a card, untap, and you keep doing that.
and then you're looting the entire time too.
And eventually, it might go to your opponent if you decide not to kill it. But
They get it tapped.
yeah. All right. On that note, we should probably wrap it up.
Yeah, and then you treasure cruise because at that point you've looted so much that you've filled up
Yeah,
your library.
still legal in standard.
Yeah.
Also true. So
Restricted in vintage, banned in legacy and modern, legal in standard.
so if you want to break it, you
Yep.
still got a chance. Still got time. All right. Thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you, I'm sure, again very soon.
Yeah.
And, yeah. Thanks, Jer, for coming
Yeah.
in and giving us dropping some knowledge on us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.